This is the
Five Starr
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. Hi. What do you guys want to talk about? This is such good shit. Thanks, guys. Back to you.
All right, ladies and gents. It's Monday. It is beyond freezing in the room I'm recording in right now. I'm about to talk about Retro Raw in just a few minutes. That is not helping my mood. Just kind of your typical average day of spring in Pittsburgh, I guess. One day I'm sitting on the porch in 70-degree weather. The next day I'm at my apartment with 15 layers of clothing on. Now, one thing that's been helping is taking more consistent trips to the sauna. Kind of got away from that for a while because, I haven't actually had time to sit in the sauna for like 20 minutes and just relax. But it does keep my body temperature up throughout most of the day. That and super warm showers. God, I needed a warm shower after watching Retro Raw. Try to rinse off all the stank of that program. Before we dive into all the wondrous material that lies ahead, make sure y'all subscribe, comment, like the show if you have not done so already. Come back and check out the podcast every Monday and Friday for new riveting content and riveting discussions on classic and occasionally modern wrestling. Still trying to map out how I want to go about these WWF shows because we are starting to enter that time period where the In Your House events are coming up. And there's something like 20-something pay-per-view specials from 95 to 98. I think that's how long they ran, right? What was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre special? Was that 98 or 99? I think that was the last one they ever ran. I mean, for what I remember, those In Your House pay-per-views were never all that memorable. I definitely would like to review the first handful just to see whether or not it's even worth doing a full deep dive into the entire IYH library. I mean, I probably won't do extensive recaps of all the matches like I would for a Big Four pay-per-view. As normal, it'll probably be a trial and error thing. I mean, there are only like maybe 5 of those in a given year, so, it's not like we'd have to go through the entire catalog month by month. But we'll talk about that more as we roll into May. For now, we can dive into the juicy details of Retro Raw from whatever the day was, April 24th, 1995. And I will credit them where it's due. Approximately 5 seconds into this week's show, didn't take long, but they had me rolling on the floor, dying of laughter. A cold open quote that only Vince McMahon would find even remotely thrilling. Deep in the heart of Cornhusker country. There's a momentary awkward pause, to which Jerry Lawler responds by simply screaming, "What?" Our thoughts exactly, Jerry. Only Vincent K. McMahon would find the ability to make Omaha, Nebraska a must-see attraction. The only state in the country where its cow population outweighs human beings. The Omaha Civic Auditorium. A venue that I don't believe I've heard uttered since this very moment. If you can name me one major wrestling event that took place at the Omaha Civic Auditorium, aside from this April 24th episode of Raw, I will send you $100. and you're not permitted to look anything up on the internet. So deep in the heart of redneck country, what better way to kick off Raw this week by sending out the epitome of redneck gimmicks in 1995? The Smoking Guns. Because that's what those Nebraskans were craving after all. This is their pastime. They can identify with the Smoking Guns. Riding horses, shooting off their pistols, and wearing them good old blue jeans. The stereotypes on this show are quite mind-boggling, as a matter of fact. So Billy and Bard wrestled a couple of chumps to kick off this week's show. I believe their opponents were Barry Horowitz and the Brooklyn Brawler. Because you knew that would get some heat. Let's send out the Brooklyn Brawler here in fucking Omaha, Nebraska, of all places. You think that was deliberate enough? The match went like 2 minutes. The Guns hit their backdrop neckbreaker Dilly Bob and got the pin. Probably my favorite moment of the whole show looking back. Barry Horowitz giving such little fucks about this match. As soon as the Smoking Guns hit their finish on the Brooklyn Brawler, Horowitz teases that he's going to try to enter the ring to break up the fall. As soon as Billy steps into the line of fire, Horowitz just hops down from the apron and immediately walks to the back. Totally threw the Brooklyn Brawler under the bus here at the end. Gotta love douchebag heels. I have no other reason to presume this match occurred other than the mere fact that they were in Nebraska. Someone looked around and said, "Who is our most redneck gimmick on the show right now?" Billy and Bart. Congratulations. You're wrestling this week. I mean, looking back, it was probably better than the match they did advertise for the show. Whew, good God. If y'all need further validation as to why giving Kevin Nash a live microphone is never a good idea, case in point, his promo here to promote the main event. This is a direct quote from Diesel. As Vince asks him about the decision to defend the WWF title against Bam Bam Bigelow later on, he goes, "When I won the World Wrestling Federation Championship, that right there, that is the official low point of Diesel's run in the WWF in 95. Dude. I mean, he was already a very shitty babyface to begin with. Like, even Kevin Nash knew he was not suited for this role. There's no drive or passion behind anything he says. Every single one of his promos, they're total clock in, clock out dialogues. I'm here to say some stuff, put on a happy face for the camera, and then I'm good to pick up my paycheck at the door and head out for the week. Total popcorn fart. And then we went back to the ring for some ladies action. Because, WWF still had one of those in 95. A women's division. I know it's easy to forget that. You know who else I forgot about? Was Harvey Whippleman. Yeah, he's still sucking a paycheck out of this company in 95. It's Bertha Faye versus Pantera Serena. Vincent Lawler couldn't go 10 fucking seconds without resorting to fat jokes. I'll give you one guess as to whom they were directed at. Don't get me wrong, they were kind of funny. They were highly more entertaining than watching Bertha Faye try to move around the ring. Christ. This has got to be an all-time terrible TV match. It was by far the worst women's match I've ever seen on TV. Anything the girls have ever done in the last 15 to 20 years on mainstream television, I promise you, even the worst of the bunch were better than Bertha Faye. She was taking those dusty polka dots to a whole different level of terrible gimmick ideas. You knew that was a Vince call. He took one look at Bertha and said, "I've got it, pal. We'll have her wear polka dots. That'll cover up her obvious girth." Well, it did not, as a matter of fact, help to cover up Bertha's girth. I won't even bother to describe the details of this god-awful match. All you need to know is that there was a spot here where Bertha refused to catch Serena during a crossbody attempt. Serena came down and splatted right on the mat like a pancake. And that wasn't even the worst part of the match. Bertha did a sit-out powerbomb, a modified press slam from an F5 position, and then she just won after planting her fat ass on Serena's chest. Repugnantly horrible. You know, I think I now see why the women's division had been neglected for the last 18 months. Because then we got to see it again on TV. And this is the abortion they presented us with. Oh, by the way, is it true that Bertha Faye broke Alundra Blaze's nose as a shoot? Can somebody confirm that? If that really happened, I would totally believe it. Especially after her performance here. So that led us to the WWF Championship match. Diesel versus Bam Bam. Because after that garbage TV match they just presented to me 5 minutes prior, what I really wanted to see follow that was a match involving Kevin fucking Nash. I still don't know what's worse. Them forcing Kevin Nash on me as a babyface in 1995, or them forcing Shawn Michaels on me as a babyface in 1995. They're both awful. I still think Shawn's worse. But that is a real thin margin. I noted some offense from Diesel in this barn burner of a title match. The slow clubbing blows to the back of the neck. The illegal boot to the throat spot in the corner. He's a babyface, by the way. Just want to point that out. Something that I think I coined a running clothesline off the ropes. It was more like Diesel stumbling into Bam Bam with his body because he got so gassed out running the ropes. There were also a handful of hair flips here. Can't ever forget to mention the hair flip. That's a Kevin Nash classic. God bless Bam Bam. He tried so hard here. I mean, for a big lumbering man match, he was trying to feed for Diesel and bump around to make him look good. I swear to God, I was not watching this match at half speed. This had to have been the longest 15 minutes of my entire life watching a wrestling match. It just kept going and going and going and going and going. And it's not like it was ever exciting. I mean, they did all the typical big guy offense you would expect. It was a lot of plotting ring action. It took about 8 years to set up everything they did. And like, I know that sounds like I'm harping on Bam Bam. I'm really not. I mean, it's just virtually impossible to get anything remotely good out of Kevin Nash in the ring because he always fucking sucked. And here's the hooking point with everything they did here. After Tatanka finally came out to scout, they led into their third commercial pitch with him throwing a right-handed Diesel. And they come back with Bam Bam going for an Irish whip on Diesel. But they do the reversal spot where Diesel ends up throwing Bam Bam toward the ropes. And Tatanka had his back turned, so he took it at face value that it was Diesel charging the ropes. So without looking, he reaches in and trips up Bam Bam without even knowing. And then Diesel immediately hit Bam Bam with a horrible-looking jackknife. Damn near dropped the guy right on the back of his neck. And that all happened within about 15 seconds after they came back from break. At which point, they pretty much immediately segue into the afterbirth. With approximately 1 minute's worth of build, Ted DiBiase gets on the stick and starts raking Bam Bam over the coals for being a fuck-up. Talking about how he's let the corporation down time and time again. He outright says, "You lost to a football player." Touché. Well, the long and short of it, he fired Bam Bam from the group, and as Bam Bam tried to fight off Tatanka and trap Ted in the corner so he could get his hands on him, outruns IRS and Psycho Sid's blue trunks to get the jump on Bam Bam. And then the heels all beat him up and left him for dead. So just to recap, within the span of 4 months, we've now seen like 83 new additions to the $1 Million Corporation, multiple teasings of splits and dissension, random names showing up for literally no reason. I mean, this has got to be the most ineffective faction of all time, right? At least the NWO stuck together through thick and thin. These motherfuckers have turned on each other more times than the Big Show did during his entire WWF WWE run. It's ridiculous. So I take it Bam Bam's a babyface now. I'm sure that'll change again in the next 3 months. I honestly have no earthly clue where any of this goes. I have blocked out pretty much everything they ever did with $1 Million Corporation in the WWF. I mean, I think I talked about that before. It's all a blur to me. Presumably, you would expect Bam Bam to wrestle either Tatanka or IRS at the first In Your House. Maybe it'll be a tag team match. We'll see. Again, I really don't have any memories about that first In Your House event. The card in particular is just like completely over my head. The main event was Diesel versus Psycho Sid. That's all you need to know. And because they needed to kill another 4 minutes of airtime, they sent out Aldo Montoya to work a quick one. I can't tell if the crowd was eerily quiet because they didn't care, or maybe they were just trying to figure out what the fuck Montoya was wearing on his face. It was a jockstrap, by the way. I don't care what anybody says. Montoya won with a bulldog out of the corner. I think it was a bulldog. I don't even remember. Who cares? And fuck Nebraska. That's really the main takeaway from this complete shit show of a program. Never mind how bad the booking is. What the hell was the WWF doing in Omaha, Nebraska in 1995? It's like, I mean, even the Central States regional territories barely ever registered in Nebraska. This was during the height of when wrestling was doing record low business. And somebody thought this would have been a great place to host a Raw from. Right. Huh? Then again, their featured match for the card was a Diesel WWF title match. You get what you pay for. And now for some rapid-fire SmackDown notes from Friday night. Let's take a look and see what the offering was here from my hometown of Pittsburgh. By the way, this is how little I've been paying attention to modern wrestling in 2024. I had no clue SmackDown was coming to Pittsburgh this week. I drive through Pittsburgh every week when I'm commuting to work. I didn't see any promotional billboards. No advertisements. Nothing. So unless I was randomly perusing Ticketmaster or something, I don't know how anybody would have known SmackDown was in Pittsburgh. Unless you go to WWE's homepage, I guess. Which, I mean, who does that? Let's be honest here. So yes, Pittsburgh, PA brought us Friday Night SmackDown over the weekend. Corey Graves was having a blast because he also happens to be from Pittsburgh. So he's talking about history and all the famous names and talents that came through the Pittsburgh region. Bruno and Kurt being the most obvious ones. I will be honest, though. I was kind of bummed about not being there at the PPG Paints Arena to see LA Knight's reaction. And the opening pop that guy got at the top of the show, right as he was coming out for his match with AJ, that was a fucking pop, dude. I'm almost amazed to see this guy still as over as he is, given how far he's fallen in the pecking order in just the last 6 to 8 months. But the people still love him. They are firmly behind LA Knight every step of the way. And I gotta be honest too, man. I've really enjoyed this feud with him and AJ. It's one of those bitter rivalries between a face and a heel with no belts on the line. It's all about pride and ego. You know, it's a very old school dynamic, but I mean, you often realize how rare it is that we have these kinds of feuds in wrestling anymore. And these guys I thought have worked really well together. I really liked the WrestleMania match on night 2. That was kind of a dark horse on both nights of the show. Now, going into their second one, you kind of had to figure AJ was going over. I mean, this was the match that determined Cody's opponent for Backlash in France. And I even remember saying last week, they could have done Cody and Knight, but I don't think they want to run the risk of splitting the audience down the middle with Cody's first title defense. The fans respect AJ, but I don't think they're going to have an issue booing him. Especially when he's going up against Cody, who's still pretty red hot with the majority of the crowd, all things considered. And in France, that definitely won't be an issue. Again, though, really strong showing in their second outing. Definitely not on the level as their Mania match, I don't think. Part of that might have been the predictability with the finish. But they worked hard. You know, lots of back and forth action toward the end there that was really good. And they even went with a really simple heat finish that you don't see a lot of guys resort to these days. Right as Knight goes for the BFT, AJ rolls out to the apron so he could thumb Knight in the eye while the ref wasn't looking. And while Knight was temporarily blinded, AJ struck him with the right hand. And then he hit his phenomenal forearm for the pin. Now, in hindsight, yes. You know, we see guys thumb each other in the eye right in front of the ref all the time, and nothing's ever done about it. You know, at least here, they're letting you know up front that these guys will evidently have a third match down the road. Where, I'm not sure. It's hard to imagine they're going to try to drag this out until SummerSlam in August. Crazier things have been done before. But if they are going to do a third blow-off, I mean, they're definitely going to need to add a stipulation to that. My gut is telling me they're going to do some stupid street fight or hardcore plunder bullshit match. You know, hopefully these guys are smart enough to suggest something a little more thought out than that. But this all worked. AJ's getting the match with Cody at Backlash. It'll be a nice buffer program between two top guys that know what they're doing. I have no qualms with anything they did in the first quarter of the show. And yes, since everybody's going to keep bringing it up, I know AJ's yoked. You can stop talking about it. We're aware. So moving on with things, after we skip past all the infomercials and window dressing, the next big thing of note on this week's show was the reveal of the new set of tag team titles that A-Town Down will be sporting. After, God, I don't even know how long it's been. The whole red and blue strap tag belts they had for years. With the fucking plates that look like pennies and dimes. Well, they're finally ditching those god-ugly things. And they will now be calling Theory and Fodder the WWE Tag Team Champions. Since the tag belts are now brand exclusive again. So, well, here's the funny thing. I actually like the whole exchange with Hunter, Nick Aldis, and the A-Town Clowns. Like, you got the heel champions popping off and disrespecting Hunter the whole time. Joking about people referring to Triple H as a magician. Saying there's nothing magic can do to make Theory and Fodder better than they are right now. I can maybe argue something for Fodder. But when Hunter goes in to shake their hands and congratulate them on the new belts, Theory and Fodder give Hunter the old roundabout, and they shake each other's hands instead. So in steps Aldis to inform that if they ever disrespect the CCO again like that, Aldis will make A-Town Down's title reign disappear like magic. And again, man, this is the kind of shit that's been missing for years in pro wrestling. Authority figures that actually had balls and put the wrestlers in their place when they try to overstep their boundaries. And not being walking doormats for all the talent to deprecate. Aldis has been great in that role. He's a much more effective GM than Adam Pearce ever was. Like, how many times did I sit here and complain about how stupid it was whenever Pearce would have no sense of control on the show? And all the talent would openly mock him on camera and make him look like a spineless dweeb. It was so annoying. Nick Aldis ain't that kind of guy. He's a former NWA World Champion, damn it. He doesn't take shit. So I like this little altercation. It worked. I still think Grayson Fodder's a waste of time, effort, and money. Theory's got something. Fodder still looks like he ought to be parking cars in the lot before all the shows. But then they immediately killed us all by setting up that four-way afterwards, with the winning team getting a challenge for the belt at Backlash. And man, as soon as I heard Aldis say the words fatal four-way, like freaking clockwork, dude, I immediately stopped caring. I was like, really? Another fucking one of these things? What is it with modern wrestling's fetish with multi-man matches? Is it just so commonplace now that nobody ever thinks of it? I mean, I can't stress enough how much I've come to loathe multi-mans and street fights in wrestling anymore. Just because of how frequently they're spammed. And for those that care, the match was the Street Profits versus the New Catch Republic versus the Legado Lackeys versus AOP. In other words, 3 middle-of-the-road tag teams plus 2 giant meatheads that have had a total combined 3 matches since they came back to the company. I mean, this is what the tag division on SmackDown is in WWE. A miscellaneous collection of bodies. So after fast-forwarding through all that, the Street Profits won. If that's a title program that anybody cares about in the slightest, congratulations. You're the one single fan in existence. Now, one thing I do want to elaborate on is all the follow-up to the Bloodline story for this week. And before I get into the particulars of what they did here, let me start by giving WWE some credit, because they've earned it. They're trying some new stuff right now. The Tama Tonga debut is interesting. Solo sort of redirecting traffic and taking ownership with Roman out of the picture for the time being. The attack on Jimmy Uso. I mean, they're basically crafting a story now where Solo's attempting to take over Roman's role. And while it's generating heat on Solo in the process, it's also at the same time getting Roman over as a babyface. Which is kind of ironic if you think about it. I mean, Roman hasn't really done anything to warrant the babyface reactions. Aside from him just not being there on TV. You know, in the crowd, I think, instinctually understanding that without Roman and Rock's involvement, you know, the bloodline is just sort of mid. And that's not a knock on Solo or anything, but I mean, the guy's still young. He's not in the same playing field as a Rock or a Roman in terms of star power. And the people recognize that. So they had this dilemma in the venue where once Solo and Paul Heyman came out and started their promo, didn't take long for the Pittsburgh crowd to start a "We Want Roman" chant. And they actually tried to hijack Solo's promo by drowning him out with a Dom Mysterio boos, not letting him get a word in. Of course, WWE wasn't pumping in the canned boos to make it sound even louder. I don't know if that's going to be a thing going forward. But if that turns out to be a case where every place they go, Solo's going to get the Dom Mysterio treatment, no, at least Pittsburgh can claim they started a chain reaction. But, well, okay, here's the thing. Prior to this segment, Solo had arrived at the arena and asked Paulie where Kevin Owens was. And they kept milking this throughout the first half of the show where Solo was impatiently walking around the back looking for KO. And you had Heyman trying to drill into Solo's head that he's making irrational decisions right now. And the payoff, evidently, was Kevin Owens getting beat up by Tama Tonga in the aisleway. And they had the work blood on KO's head, trying to make it look like he was in a legitimate car wreck. Spoiler for the follow-up segment. They actually did, in fact, work a car wreck spot in the parking lot. After CM Punk just did an interview with Ariel Helwani on his podcast making fun of Jungle Jackass for wanting to destroy rental cars and smash in windows. Well, here we are a few weeks later. WWE's cracking jokes about destroying rental cars. And potentially destroying real rentals. I cannot confirm if these two cars were rentals or not. But it had to be an intentional rib. No way that was convenient. After all the drama we've been seeing lately, come on now. But here's what I was trying to figure out in all this. Why was Solo pissed off at Kevin Owens? Why were the Bloodline trying to hunt him down? Did I miss a segment the other week? I know there was that brief skit where KO joked about the Bloodline getting kicked out of their locker room. Was that what this was all about? Solo was mad that the Bloodline got their locker room usurped? So he put out a hit on Owens to have him run down in the parking lot and potentially killed? They do understand the PPG Paints Arena has security cameras all over the lot, right? Once they play back that footage and show that it was Tama Tonga that ran down KO in the parking lot and tried to murder him, wouldn't that be valid grounds for criminal charges? Attempted homicide at the very least? You see, this is where pro wrestling starts to get a little silly for me. I can suspend my disbelief up to a certain point. But once you get into that gray area where you're towing the line with actual crimes being committed, that's where you start to lose me a little bit. I mean, Nick Aldis dragged Paulie out into the parking lot to show him the scene. They had cameras filming everything. It's not like it happened off arena property. I'm a little iffy on all this. You know, again, I appreciate the effort of trying to move the story along, trying to make Solo out to be this unhinged lunatic who's overstepping his bounds and trying to steal Roman's thunder. But, yeah, I gotta be honest, I'm not sure about the car thing. Now, presumably, this sets up a match for Backlash. Whether that's Solo versus Owens or Tama versus Owens, I'm not really sure what they're going to do. Maybe it'll be a tag match and Owens has to team with like a Randy Orton or something. That could work. Again, they're not half-assing this thing. Whatever the eventual payoff is when Roman comes back, I'm very intrigued to see where it all goes. I'm also interested to see how The Rock factors into all this. They just need to be a little careful with some of the fine details. I'm up with you up until the vehicular homicide attempts. And then I sort of call things into question a little bit. So after said attempted vehicular homicide, one presumes, well, it's right back to the ring for more action. Got to keep the show moving, after all. It was ever so important that we go back for Carlito versus Santos Escobar. Because in the playbook of WWE, apparently there's an unwritten law that Latinos are not allowed to wrestle anybody else except other Latinos. This is now the 47th consecutive week where they've done LWO versus Legado del Fantasma in some combination. They threw some darts at a board and came up with this match for the week. Have we seen it? Probably. These two factions have never wrestled anybody else except each other. So I'd be shocked if we never saw this match at some point. I left the room while it was going on. No idea what happened. I came back just in time to see Escobar hit Carlito with the Phantom Driver and pin him. At which point I asked, does anybody actually remember why this faction warfare started? It's been so long, I don't even remember. Nor do I care. So, you know, on second thought, don't even share. It's not even worth it. In one ear and out the other. And then we had the TV main event. Naomi versus Bayley for the WWE Women's Championship. Guess we can all stop joking about not being able to distinguish the difference between the SmackDown version of the women's title and the Raw version. Apparently, Rhea Ripley got injured during a backstage angle and had to relinquish the belt this past week on Raw. And that fucking sucks. I saw during that Progressive Flow infomercial, I mean, they replayed the whole sequence, up to and including the promo. So I guess she's going to be out for a few months. Or at least long enough to where they thought it was worth taking the belt off of her to crown a new champion. So wish her a speedy recovery. I mean, look. I like Bayley. I don't have anything against her. But, like, seriously, what was the incentive to want to watch this match? It's Bayley versus Naomi. Two baby faces with no real issue at hand. Nobody ever suspected Naomi was winning this match. So no, I didn't watch. Skipped ahead to see if anything interesting happened at the end. Turns out the answer was no. Tiffany Stratton just appeared out of nowhere and blindsided Bayley for the blatant disqualification. Yippee. And if you're a Tiffany Stratton fan, I'm sure you were throwing popcorn in the air over this. I, for one, have no opinion of Tiffany Stratton, because I'm really not all that interested in seeing more mediocre NXT talent get pounded down my throat. I've heard some positive critiques about Tiffany's work, but that's also coming from the same cast of fans that told me how awesome Sasha Banks was back in the day. And look where she is now. So I'll just be over here doing my bird's eye view like I normally do with the women's division, because as is usually the case, I'm not really missing anything. But that was SmackDown. Again, they are really trying to wipe away that old Vince McMahon stain. You could see it in their presentation. The way they're filming things, the way segments are connected and kind of flow together. It's less choreographed. Is that the right word? You know, like even if the talent are trying to remember material, there is an authenticity about the way it comes across on television. God, especially when we talk about NXT in a sec here. I mean, you'll see how patently obvious that is. But like I said, the Bloodline stuff is still catching my attention. Cody wasn't on the show this week, but, you know, I take it he'll be appearing on SmackDown more often going forward. Especially once they get through all the draft stuff and sort of clean up the roster. And that's probably something we'd benefit from right now, is a little bit of a roster shakeup. I still don't really care about the draft as a whole, because every year it's the same story. The brand exclusivity lasts for all of like 3 weeks before they change their minds. And people just kind of come and go as they please with no explanation. But again, different management, different staff. Maybe it'll actually stay to its true form. So how about Retro NXT? Well, they spared us Khali this week. That was a major plus. Honestly, that's all I got. Nah, I'm just kidding. Actually, they addressed some major story development from right out of the gate here. A bit of a pivotal turning point in the women's division here in NXT. After Paige had recently made her debut on Raw and won the butterfly belt, management took one look at that and said, well, you know, she does still have that NXT championship. It's kind of unfair to the rest of the locker room to have her as a full-time main roster talent, yet she's still carrying around the developmental girls belt. Maybe we ought to do something about that. So Bradshaw meets with Paige in the back before the show begins. Not in his office. Not in a boardroom with other management around to facilitate anything. He just randomly bumps into her in a corridor at the Full Sail Arena. And he just stirs up casual conversation with her. Hey, Paige. Fancy meeting you here. Wonderful weather we're having here down in Florida. Oh, by the way, you're stripped of the NXT Women's title. And of course, Paige is caught very off guard by that announcement. So JBL reads her the whole corporate DEI speech. Says it's unfair to the rest of the female locker room for Paige to be walking around with both sets of women's titles. Technically, when she's not wrestling in NXT full-time, she probably shouldn't be carrying around the NXT Divas title. So, well, after Paige initially says, no, fuck you, I'm not giving the belt up, Bradshaw basically reiterates the same talking points. Oh, Paige, you're great. You're going to have tough shoes to fill, blah, blah. And then she goes, well, all right then. And that was how Paige was unceremoniously stripped of the NXT title A complete 30-second random backstage pre-tape in the cold open of NXT. No fanfare, nothing. They just took the belt from her. Can you imagine? But with that meaningless dribble out of the way, we go to the ring for our opening TV bout this week. It is Rusev versus Travis Tyler. I believe that was the job guy I mistook as Chad Gable way back when. On top of Matt Bloom not understanding the difference between Bulgarian and Russian language. I try to drown out most of the commentary because it's usually god-awful. Rusev basically killed the guy in 2 minutes and then won with the accolade. Meanwhile, the NXT fans tried to amuse themselves with random heckling chants. I think they were trying to sing Adam Rose's theme song at one point. They must have gotten an early cue. Because guess who was in the following pre-tape after the match aired? The fucking party boy himself. Adam Rose. And the Street Posse. With all the WWE extras. Good old Brawny the Strowman was hanging out here. Elias was there. It is amazing when you look back at this period and see what some of these poor idiots got roped into earlier in their careers. Somehow Strowman worked out for a brief period of time. Elias was sort of hit and miss over the years, but no, he definitely gained a little bit of traction on Raw with the whole walk with Elias shtick. But it's just like, I mean, you see him dressed in this wacky gear, dancing around. They all look like goofs. It's almost incredible to think they actually had careers after this. Oh, by the way, I have no idea what Adam Rose said in this promo. Something about Camacho. I didn't care. And then we had Charlotte and Sasha versus Emma and Paige. Funny how less than 2 hours after Paige literally got stripped of the NXT Women's title, she's back out here on TV, peachy as a clam. Just happy to be part of the show. Teaming with her good pal Emma. Oh, trust me, we'll talk about Paige in a minute here. Talk about a fall from grace. You know, it's funny too, because the match itself wasn't actually too bad. Probably because Sasha spent most of the match on the apron and not actually getting involved. But trust me, that's not me praising Charlotte's work. I mean, it kind of just goes to show how bad Sasha's ring work is. I mean, they did a very grassroots basic tag match. Heat on Emma. Hot tag to Paige. All that good stuff. There was a 4-way breakdown toward the end, which led to the quote of the decade from Tom Phillips. Who is the legal diva? Yeah. That right there is where I knew all credibility of the NXT women's division went immediately out the window. But then we get to the finish. It was Charlotte hitting Paige with natural selection and pinning her clean. Several hours, allegedly, after Bradshaw just stripped this poor woman of the NXT title. Now she's doing 5-minute jobs on NXT TV. She went from top-tier athlete to just another girl. It's amazing how WWE booking works sometimes. But, I mean, clearly we all knew what this was setting up a takeover. And they couldn't have made it any more obvious who the next champion was going to be. I mean, it was a better option to go with than Sasha. That's all I have to say. Oh, by the way, I think this may have been the only time I ever saw Charlotte attempt a flare flop in real time. Thank God she did away with it. Even the daughter of Ric fucking Flair, she could not do a believable Flair flop. That is when you know you suck. And then we came back for Tyson Kidd versus Mason Ryan. All natural Mason Ryan. Should have been his nickname. Because you know for a fact that motherfucker was on the gas. Don't even try to lie to me. And for the record, no, he was not, in fact, better than Batista. It was an okay big guy, little guy scrap. I mean, Tyson was a great athlete, but there was only so much he was going to get out of Mason Ryan. He sold for him a little bit. Actually, a lot of bit. Probably more than he should have, given where he's about to go in the pecking order. But he caught Ryan with the blockbuster out of the corner for the pin. At which point he did a post-match interview with Renee, pretty much delivering the poster pro-NXT agenda, saying that it's the place of ultimate opportunity. NXT is gaining more and more exposure and popularity as the months go by. And it is now Tyson's chance to flourish and prove why he's been undervalued for years. If anybody wants to test him in the squared circle, he will prove them wrong. It was actually a fairly good little babyface promo. A little wooded in terms of its delivery, but I mean, he got the people into it by the end. I would argue he got over the brand more so than he did himself. It was a very bizarre promo. Like, Renee was out there asking Tyson about his future plans, and then Tyson just kind of turned it around and made it all about NXT, the brand. Still a good promo, just a little counterintuitive. It was surely better than the match that followed this. They are testing the waters with Angelo Dawkins here in 2014. He was not a street prophet quite yet, but he sure was a goofball with the gimmick he got saddled with here. I'll tell you this right now. Anytime an agent comes up to you and suggests, hey, why don't you wear a backpack down to the ring? You know right there, game over. Call it a career, hang up the boots, pursue a line of work in customer service at Walmart. You're done. I'm not kidding, by the way. That was a real thing that happened. They sent out Angelo Dawkins in flannel in a backpack. A grown fucking man. And he was not about to go camping, for the record. And yet, oddly enough, he still probably looked less ridiculous than his opponent, Tyler Breeze. It's unfortunate, too, because, I actually thought Dawkins looked pretty good in this match. The guy's always been a real solid athlete. It just took a long time for him to find his footing in WWE. Because I even remember that guy was bouncing around in NXT for years. It was like gimmick repackage after gimmick repackage. They were constantly trying to find something new for him, just to give him a little bit of flavor. And they eventually settled with the Street Profits niche. But he really struggled for a long time to find himself in NXT. Good athlete, solid worker. Just not a lot happening in the personality wing. And we all know that's the kiss of death in WWE. Especially when he was coming up in the business. I mean, as stupid as Tyler Breeze was, it got over. That I can't deny. The subset of the weird WWE population that actually found Tyler Breeze entertaining. Hey, different strokes for different folks. Some fans like their wrestlers macho and mean. Others like their wrestlers gay and lean. But we don't judge. And that took us to the main event. 6-man tag team action. Pretty unique little lineup here. It is Corey Graves and the Ascension versus Sami Zayn and the Usos. Boy, things really do come full circle, don't they? Sami Zayn and the Usos teaming up in 2014. Man, Zayn was feeling Usy even back then. He was always real Bloodline. Don't ever forget that. And of course, this is about 10 years before Jimmy and Jay got haircuts. So I saw them here and I immediately could not recognize which one was which. There was actually an interesting tidbit of history here that I didn't even remember until I read about it on Corey Graves' wiki page. If you saw this match in 2014, you probably would have never thought anything of it. But with hindsight being 2020, this was Corey Graves' last ever match before his abrupt retirement. And how ironic, right? After they had been working the concussion angle with him and Sami Zayn for all those weeks. And after they literally just aired a "Don't Try This at Home" promo heading into the closing minutes of the match. Turns out this was the match where Corey got a concussion. And it subsequently ended his in-ring career. Just like that. A totally random 6-man TV main event where he wrestled for maybe a combined total of 3 minutes. And it was something really stupid too. Just a freak accident where he took a bump from Sami during a crossbody and then smacked the back of his head off the ring mat. Nothing overly dangerous. Nothing crazy or stupid. He just landed wrong and hit the back of his head. Nothing he could do about it. The guy with the catchphrase, "Stay down." Yeah. Looks like he took his own advice. Too soon. Maybe that was a low ball. I don't know. I mean, the guy has a career for life as a commentator because of the incident. So it's not like he went to the unemployment line after this. I would say he's doing pretty well for himself, all things considered. It was a long match, too. I mean, I think this went like somewhere around 15 minutes by the end. It was actually pretty good, if you remove the tragedy of the fallout with Corey. But they took their time building to the big moments. They got to work over the Usos for a bit of heat. Led up to the big hot tag for Sami at the end. That's when he did the crossbody onto Corey and then rang his bell. And there was a giant series of flip dive spots out to the floor before the other Uso came in and gave Corey the Superfly splash and pinned him. And like you could tell too, immediately after Corey took the fall, like he's immediately rolling out to the floor and getting out of dodge. I mean, you could tell something was wrong instantly. And again, I made it pretty clear that I was never a big Corey Graves fan. I never understood the appeal. Didn't get the gimmick. Didn't get the personality. I thought his ring work was sloppy and not all that good. But you never like hearing news about guys' careers getting cut short due to freak accidents. You know, especially when the guy was so young, too. But I think that was the sad reality of Corey as a wrestler. Because this wasn't the only time he had concussion problems in WWE. He had several issues prior to this where the doctors wouldn't clear him for extensive periods of time. I think he was just injury prone. And finally they just told him, yeah, dude, you got to hang up the boots. Because this is only going to get worse if you keep trying to do this. So yeah, after this, he's pretty much relegated to commentary full time. He's still doing it 10 years later. He's awful at it. I hate his commentary as much as I hated his ring work. But good on him, man. He's been soaking a contract out of WWE ever since this moment. Can't fault him for making money. But with this basically cutting the Sami Zayn-Corey Graves feud short, I think they pretty much have to rewrite Sami's creative direction from now until TakeOver. I don't remember offhand what they have him do. Was it Tyler Breeze he ends up wrestling? May have been. I think they were teasing that on TV for a while and then kind of broke away from it. So we'll see. All in all, good match. Crowd was hot for it. The Usos still wrestled back then like they do today. Thigh slaps galore. Overusing the super kick to a ridiculous degree. Punches still look like shit. Nothing's changed. But the people are into them. It was a very different world back then in WWE. Overall, the show was the usual mixed bag of good and bad. I often find that I'm trying to amuse myself with a lot of these recaps. Elsewise, I might drive myself crazy trying to take this all seriously. You know, it's always kind of been that way with WWE, hasn't it? I don't think there's ever been a time where I would say I outright enjoyed every single solitary thing happening on WWE programming. I guess you could say that for wrestling in general. I mean, you're never going to like every single thing you see in a given week. If you do, you're lying. But with WWF and WWE, I mean, that really has always been the case. The stuff here in 2014 with NXT, it's just very much all over the map. You got some great things happening like the Sami Zayn push, the Tyson Kidd push, the Adrian Neville title program with Brodus Clay. And then you got CJ Parker and Adam Rose and Tyler Breeze. And you're left there sitting wondering, what the fuck are we doing? Are we a wrestling company or a fucking carnival festival for kids? I still don't really know at the end of the day. That's the most baffling part. Story for another time. But as we wrap up this show, I'm very assertive with that closure there. Thanks everybody for tuning in as always. We will be back this coming Friday for more of the classic content, the territory coverage, and I mean, we're pretty much following this format until the Backlash special, which offhand I do not know when that is. Are they calling it Backlash or is it Backlash France? It appears to be called Backlash France. They got the promotional poster and everything. Yep. So as of right now, they have 2 matches announced. There's a WWE Championship Eliminator Tournament. Oh, wait, that was for the SmackDown title. That's right. Well, that's settled now because we all know AJ's facing Cody. Oh, that's right. Damian Priest has the World Heavyweight title. I always forget that. I'm surprised he's not facing Drew. Why is he wrestling Jey Uso? Oh, I see. It says here on the wiki page that Jey Uso won a fatal 4-way to become the #1 contender. Wow, imagine that. A multi-man match. Haven't seen any of those lately. Fuck. Well, that settles it. Backlash France. The date for that is May the 4th. So that is next weekend. No. 2 weeks. 2 weeks out. Cool. I'll keep that on my radar. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and I will catch you all soon. Take care. Peace out.